In Chapter 12, we're going to learn all about preparing payroll records, but first we need to do a little brief introduction into hours worked and rate of pay and so forth. So here's a couple of examples. First of all, just so you know, and maybe you already do, any hours that you work over 40, you get paid time and a half. So if your regular rate of pay is $10 per hour, that would equal $15 per hour, any hours worked over 40 hours. So here's a couple of examples. First we have Marshall. He's working this week 30 hours and he gets paid $10 an hour. Well, this is just simple math. We take his hours times his rate of pay and we get his total gross pay for the week. So 30 times 10 is $300 he earned for the week before any taxes were taken out. Then we have Emily. She worked 45 hours and she gets paid $9 per hour. We just learned that anything over 40 hours she's going to get overtime, so we have to figure out her overtime rate of pay. So to do that, we just take her rate of pay $9 times 1.5, that's time plus the half, and her overtime rate of pay then is $13.50 per hour. So to figure out how much she earns per the week, we first have to take her 40 hours times her $9 rate of pay, and she gets $360 for her regular hours. Then we take her 5 hours of overtime, because remember she worked 45 hours. We multiply that by her overtime rate of pay, $13.50, and she gets $67.57 in overtime. Add those two numbers together, $360 plus the $67.50. Her total gross income before taxes then would equal the $47.50. And then finally Kyle, he works 43 hours this week. He gets paid $10.25 per hour. His overtime rate of pay, again, $10.25 times 1.5, or time plus the half, equals 15.375. So it's not a very nice even number. So to figure this out, we're going to round like normal math. So this would round to $15.38. So this 375 would round up to 38 cents. So his regular hours worked were 40 times 10.25, so 410. Then he had 3 hours in overtime, so 3 times the 15.38 to give him 46.14 overtime. Add those two together, 410 plus 46.14. He earns $456.14 for the week before any taxes were taken out. So now we're going to go to Applia and we're going to try 12-1 work together with some of this figuring out hours and rates of pay. Here are the directions for 12-1. This is some information taken from an employee time cards. We are going to, for each employee, calculate the amount of regular, overtime, and total earnings. Overtime hours are paid at time plus a half, the regular rate. So here we go. We have 4 employees to figure out. Here's the employee number. We have their regular hours worked, any overtime worked, and the regular rate of pay. The only thing they don't have is a column here for the overtime rate, so we have to kind of figure that out on our calculator. So the first one I've done already. This person, number 1, worked 40 regular hours. The regular rate of pay is $9 per hour, so 40 times 9 is $360 earnings for the regular earnings. Then we have to figure out their overtime rate, so we take that $9 times the 1.5 and we get $13.50. So you have to just either write that down on a scrap paper or put it in your calculator. So $13.50 is the overtime rate times 5 hours, and that calculates to $67.50 in overtime. We add those two numbers together and our total earnings are $427.50. So let's look at employee 2. This person worked 40 regular hours and 3 overtime and makes $12.50 per hour. So to figure out regular earnings, 40 times $12.50, and when you calculate that out, you get 500. Then we have to figure out the overtime rate of pay, so we take $12.50, multiply it by 1.5, we get $18.75. So we take the overtime hours, multiply by $18.75, and we come up with $56.25. And then we add those two numbers together to get their total earnings, so that's $556.25. Third person works 30 hours and no overtime, and the rate of pay is $9.75. So this is going to be even easier. 30 times 975 is 292.50. There's no overtime hours, so we just put a 0 there. And when we add that up, that's pretty simple. The same, 292.50. Our fourth person worked 42 hours. Rate of pay is $11, so 40 times 11 is $4.40. The rate of pay, 11 times 1.5, that's going to be $16.50. So 2 hours times $16.50, they're making $33 in overtime. And then add those two numbers together and we get $4.73. So that's pretty simple. You just have to remember to round if necessary when you're figuring out the overtime rate. So go ahead and finish 12.1 together and move on to 12-1 on your own.